Welcome, Theatre Addicts. My name is Karen, and I'm about to see A Japanese Problem by Universal Limited here at Hastings Park. Hastings Park might seem like a strange venue for a theatrical performance. However, it's actually the site of where 8,000 Canadians were detained back in 1942 due to their Japanese heritage. The performance is actually going to be held in that livestock building behind me, which is where I believe they're going to try to recreate the quasi or pseudo home setting that these detainees had to create during that time. I'm interested in this performance simply because I do feel that it is performances such as these, as well as those that tell the tales of residential schools and other such incidents in our history that are important to remind us Canadians of our nation's indiscretions to ensure that they don't happen again in the future. The only way to prevent repeating history is to know and understand it. What I'm curious about with this performance, though, is if it's really just going to be a representation of what happened back in 1942, or if somehow they're going to tie in relevance as to what's happening in today's society with regards to immigration and other similar types of events where there can be parallels drawn. So I'm going to head in and we shall see. Well, I'm back, Theatre Addicts, and that was a pretty intense 40 minutes. So basically it's a historical reenactment within a play. You get introduced to the various characters, so each contributor introduces themselves and their connection to the project, and then introduces their character, and then they do their best to lead you through a day in the life, I guess you would say, of these people who were incarcerated. And it has a glaring similarity to other historic events that I wouldn't necessarily relate to Canada. It talks about separating women and children into one area and men into another. It talks about crowds, it talks about noise, it talks about fear of illness, it talks about orderly yet unclean living conditions and the fact that they don't have proper toilets or proper washing facilities. All of that discussion really kind of made me think of other things that we've heard about in history that we found were horrific, yet we don't seem to relate to Canada. They do try to address the fact that although these folks were incarcerated, they did their best to create a life for themselves for the time that they were there, even creating entertainment for themselves and such. They would build friendships. However, there's always that uncertainty as to whether or not you were going to be taken away, someone was going to be taken away, when and if you'd ever make it home. The fear of sickness and whether or not you would be taken away and if you would ever return. And of course the fear of death and never making it out. All of those things were touched on. Also at the beginning, they're very clear that they're going to address what happened in World War II, but they also mention other events that took place in history in Canada, specifically with respect to the Asian population within Canada. But they were very clear that there's no way that they could touch on it all. And they did a really good job within only 40 minutes of really kind of touching on everything. And much to my happiness, they did manage to work in the relevance of today. They spoke of the existing holding center in downtown Vancouver that very few people are aware of. They spoke of the assimilation and loss of culture of very many Japanese families. And they spoke of the redress or attempt at redress in the 80s for many of these families as well. What was the most powerful I found was that all of these contributors, and I do like the fact that they refer to them as contributors as opposed to actors or performers, all the contributors were affected or tied in some way, and by being in the space itself, along with people whose families were affected in some way, if not directly, but even just having Japanese ancestry, made it that much more powerful. I know that this has toured and will continue to tour out east, and I fear that it won't have the same impact. I wish them the best of luck, and I do hope that they find a way to make it as powerful for future audiences. But I do think that will be a struggle. One of the other huge benefits of this, which I thought was key, is that they do have a dialogue at the end. So not so much a talk back, but really just a moment for everyone who attends to sit and process what they saw. As I said, it was quite powerful. There is some discussion if you want to talk to any of the contributors, or talk amongst yourself, or share your ideas, thoughts, feelings. Definitely added to the performance, and can't go without a mention. That would be the only thing that probably wouldn't be able to portray through a classroom. However, I would like to think that after presenting the performance or production, that at least an instructor or a teacher would be able to engage a class with some dialogue. The only thing that I could say that I didn't really enjoy, or not even really enjoy, just a bit of feedback, there's a part where they are reenacting sort of the entertainment that they would do, and I did find that the vocals were lower than the other audio, and so it was a little difficult to hear. However, maybe that was intended, so if so, then so be it. But I do kind of wish I could hear a little bit more about what the MC or audio speaker was saying. But otherwise, this is one of those things. For 40 minutes, I don't see why it can't be introduced into every high school curriculum, or even junior high for that matter. It's less than one class. It's fantastic. It's a piece of history that we don't learn about and that we should all be aware of. And I'm very interested if anyone else sees this performance, what your thoughts are. So please do leave them in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe to Theatre Addict's YouTube station, and continue to check the website for more reviews of future performances. And I'm Karen for Theatre Addict.